House in Baltimore and brings old friends and foes to us. We welcome in one-time Steeler. Now he's number one in my heart. Chad Brown comes back. Man, you are a variety dude, man. You brought me a beautiful dog for the Wounded Warriors a couple years ago. This year you're bringing some medical heat. So tell me what you got other than what the sports radio you do out in Denver these days.
All right, there's a lot of brain power in this room, but we've got a Harvard doctor of neurology at Harvard, the director of the Harvard Football Players Health Study, and I'm an advisor for that study. And what we're trying to do is gather as many former players to participate in this study as possible. Now, obviously, the more information we can provide to the doctors, the better job that they can do figuring out some of these issues that former players have, and figuring out how these issues will affect them later in life, and also how to prevent them going forward.
What was your rookie year? 93?
93. Yes.
All right, so I don't even have you up on Wiki. That was just a good guess. In 1993, what was being done on CTE, concussions? I see a little silver in your hair. I think you've been a doc for a long time, right?
I was around.
Yeah, when you were in your 20s, what were you thinking about football players doing this at practice and water being not distributed at practice? I mean, we've come a long way here. It's been 24 years for you, but everything is viewed differently now.
By my rookie year, they were allowing players to drink water. So those Bear Bryant, those days were gone. But certainly,
you were still doing Oklahoma.
We were still doing Oklahoma drills.
Right.
We were certainly taught to hit people with our head and our helmet, and the helmet was a clear part of football. In fact, my first couple years in the league, if I didn't have a ringing headache halfway through the first quarter, I felt as if I was not playing hard enough. Contrast to the last 2 years where I've done an internship with the Tennessee Titans last year and the Seattle Seahawks the year before that, where the helmet is now not taught to be part of football. That Seahawks rugby tackling thing that they teach, that is a real thing there. It's really trying to take the helmet out of football while still being incredibly physical, tough defensive football players.
It is amazing when you go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame to see that guys did this with, like, no helmets or those little leather Three Stooges, look in the 20s. Doc, I want to bring you in. Tell me about your study and bring this down to the level that our people can understand what's going on inside of your head when these things happen.
So this is an important study and a different study. It's not just about the brain. The football is a violent sport. It's an exciting sport, but there is a lot of body parts that take a beating. The joints, the muscles, it's not just the head. And so in order to address the health of former football players, one needs to be that comprehensive. Look at the whole player over his whole life, not just focus on the brain. The brain is not walking around the street alone. It's inside the skull, it's inside the body, and that body may be aching in a given part or have a torn ACL in the past. And those things
20
have an
years
impact.
ago, we would have players come by who had orthopedic issues, who had, the shoulder or the fingers or, any of those number of things. I've been doing this 23 years at Super Bowl. 15 years ago, there were a lot of sort of broken down football players physically. Now I think the last 15 years with suicides and Junior Seau and that the mental health part of this and the psychology of how to adjust after being a football player. And Chad, I mean, how many ex-teammates of yours, how many folks have I known over 21 years that have really had that struggle, and then you wonder, does it lead to depression and psychological issues that, above and beyond what I used to hear about, which was all literally my shoulder, my arm, my knee, my money, that sort of thing.
Well, I'll give a quick example. If you tear your ACL, there's a strong chance that later on in your career you're going to have, or in your life, you're going to have some knee pain, which then means there's a strong chance you won't be able to exercise, and then you'll become overweight.
And then you're on a painkiller.
Or you're overweight, and then you develop sleep apnea, which means then your brain doesn't work as well. So this approach, not just focusing on concussions or CTE, but looking at the whole body as a picture and understanding that, we have a complete system here, and a breakdown in the knee can eventually lead to breakdowns in the brain. That's what this study is trying to correlate. And we want to get as many former players involved as possible because, again, the more data we can provide to the big brains at Harvard, the better job they can do.
Alvaro Pascual Leone. Correct.
That is correct.
MD, PhD, Associate Director at the Football Players Health Study at Harvard University. Joining us here with Chad Brown, our old pal, from Denver via Seattle in Pittsburgh, but we choose to not discuss that here, at least not right now. Jerome Bettis is around the corner. We'll sit him down. So, the beginning of this study, what are the goals, and give me the whole timeline on what you're trying to do to help people like Chad and probably help current football players, right, at the beginning of this thing.
Yeah, so the ultimate goal is to make football safer for the particular people that play it, whether they do so as a child or they do so as a professional football player. We want to prevent the problems that may come from a lifelong in football. That's the goal. In order to do that,
possible? How is it possible to play this and not have some of these issues if you play it for a long enough period of time?
well, the first thing that we need to know is what are the issues that really are related to what aspect of the game. What is related to the crash helmets? What is related to the way that people run? What is related to the off-season training? What would be the best way to identify and prevent and diagnose early the different problems that may come? That's the first step. In order to do that first step, what we need is input from as many former players as possible to identify what makes the difference in the fact that some have problems, some do not. Some cope with them well, some have a hard time with it. And what is different about this study is that it is guided, led by the former football players as advisors to us, telling us these are the things that were important, this is what really is bothering us, and we can put together the appropriate ways to characterize those problems and identify the causes.
Chad, as a guy that came in the league a long time ago with that old school, now where you are, and you're in locker rooms, you're around teams in Denver, it really is taken more seriously, and it is different. And I know the Players Association went nuts here earlier this week about some players getting dinged and still winding up back in a football game, so we're not where we want to be, but at least it's not lip service anymore. When you're around an NFL team now, it is different than 25 years ago, right? Because it's talked about.
Oh, absolutely. It's different. Early in my career, I returned to games after concussions almost every single time.
You told me that Baltimore story.
Yes.
Tell that story, because I don't think you've told it on my air.
Yeah, so we were playing up in Baltimore back in the old baseball stadium.
Yes, Memorial Stadium.
Memorial Stadium.
You were a Seahawk, right?
I was a Seahawk. Winston Moss, assistant head coach with the Green Bay Packers, linebacker coach. He and I were playing outside linebacker. We blitz from the outside. Bam Morris was your running back. He sees us coming. He ducks down underneath us. Both Winston and I put our heads down to hit Bam, end up hitting each other. Winston breaks his neck.
Oh, my God.
He wears one of those halos with the screws in the head. He essentially his last snap as an NFL football player. I got a concussion so bad that it lasted almost through March. But I was cleared by the doctors to come back into the game until halftime. We're coming out of the locker room at halftime. The punters are out there warming up, and I go out and I start catching punts. I am not a punt returner. I'm a linebacker. So eventually somebody from upstairs in the press box calls down to the sideline and says, "Why is Chad out there catching punts? Somebody go talk to him." I had been lining up wrong the entire first half. I was completely out of my mind. Coaches didn't pull me out. No doctor saw it. Luckily, someone from the press box saw it.
You watched the film of this? Have you?
Yes, and it's comical to watch that film. I'm playing linebacker, and I'm lining up 9 yards off the ball. Afterwards on Monday, watching film with the coaches, like, we were wondering what was going on with you. And I was like, how come you guys didn't say anything?
You got on an airplane and flew back to Seattle after the game.
And when I got back to Seattle, they immediately took me to get some CAT scans and x-rays because, things were not looking so good for me. So it's certainly a horrific concussion that I took the next game off but played 2 games after that, and I really shouldn't have been on that field. Halfway through that ball game, I'm thinking, I
you wouldn't be playing now.
There's no way I'd be playing now. So towards the end of my career, obviously, awareness was much better. Guys were much smarter. If I got dinged, they would pull me out of the game. The last 2 seasons being an intern coach with the Tennessee Titans, with the Seattle Seahawks, the medical personnel coming in every single day to the staff meeting and breaking down where guys were, where they were in the concussion protocol, and getting no pushback at all from the coaching staff. The coaching staffs have literally become very hands-off on medical issues and really leave that
That's a good thing.
to the medical staff and to the doctors. That's a very good thing. I was on football teams where the head coach would walk into the head trainer's office, slam the door, and cuss him out about players not being available to him. And we're in the training when we could see this happening, this intimidation of this medical professional who's supposed to be there to protect us, this head coach trying to intimidate him. That no longer goes on. Thankfully, that's no longer part of the game.
Yeah, really informative piece here. Chad Brown joining us here. Alvaro Pascual Leone. You're based in Boston, yes?
Yes.
So tell me how this works. You get current, former players. How does one find you if you're a football player?
So you can Google us. You can find us on the web. We have the first step is to join the study. In order to join the study, you fill in a questionnaire. It's a 15-minute questionnaire that gives us information about your health and well-being.
Every player will want to do this, right, Chad? I mean, literally, right?
We've got 3,300 players signed up now. We're about 75 players from being the largest study ever done on former players. And that's why I'm walking around here on Radio Row doing
those. There's somebody watching on my Facebook right now.
Right.
I
saw Bruce Mash who's here yesterday. So he did 20 years. So 2 snaps for 20 years. We need your information. Again, the more information we can provide the doctors, the better job that they can do with this. So we want to be the largest study ever, not just for the standpoint of saying we're the largest study ever, but because we want to gather as much data and information as possible. And this is an age of big data. The more data we can provide these guys, the better job they can do.
And then the next step after the questionnaire is to actually be invited to come to Boston to get studied.
Right?
Baseline, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a combine for your health, right? It's to be comprehensive about all the different organ systems and how they play together, how they interact together. The players will benefit, the individual players will benefit from it, and we learn something that will benefit all kids that play football and beyond.
All right, we'll step out, take a break. Chad, we might visit back again. I know Jerome Bettis is running around here. We're going to try to throw him in here with you.
Yeah, we got to talk football. We got to talk the game.
We're going to talk the game?
And we got to talk this velvet jacket, man.
Now, we'll do that. We'll step out, take a break. My thanks to Chad Brown for stopping in. It's so nice we might do it twice. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.